Okay, so anybody want to play my little game? Not who, what language do you think was being used for the lyrics of that song? Don't expect you to know, that's why it's a guessing game. Persian, thank you for your guess, thanks for starting us off. No, it wasn't Persian, but I very much appreciate you talking to me.
Oh, I will.
Anybody else?
Farsi.
Farsi is great that some of you do know some Middle Eastern languages here. I'm impressed. Not Farsi, but thank you for your contribution. Just seeing how many Middle Eastern languages you know, really.
Egyptian.
Not Egyptian.
Turkish.
Not Turkish. You guys are great to play my little game because it was a deliberate trick, people. It was Middle Eastern sounding, but it wasn't Middle Eastern produced. The language that was being used in that song was Gaelic. So that was an Irish band, Irish Gaelic in particular. So that was an Irish band called Afro Celt, and they deliberately fused different styles of world music with the Celtic languages, of which I'm aware of there being about 5 still spoken. So yes, that was a little naughty trick. Here in Scotland, the national language before we spoke English was a Celtic language that you can call Gaelic, but you have to prefix that and say Scots Gaelic, so you know you're not talking about the one spoken in Ireland, because they are 2 distinct languages. A lot of us just refer to the one spoken in Scotland as Gaelic, so that's how I will refer to it, Gaelic, which is slightly closer to how the people who speak it say it. They actually have a long A, they say Gaelic, Gaelic. But then if I say Gaelic, you will think I'm talking about something growing in the ground. So that is the language that is only a small minority language now. Only just over 1% of the Scottish population can speak it. But it was our national language, and why is it relevant to your tour, more importantly, is that some of our, in fact the majority of our place names come from that language, and that includes the name Rosslyn. So the Ross part of Rosslyn means rocky promontory, and Lyn is fast flowing water, normally used for waterfall, but in this case referring to a river. So it describes the location not of Rosslyn Chapel, our first stop, but of a castle that was in Rosslyn that's no longer there. And it was the family from the castle who later built Rosslyn Chapel. So we'll have a little bit about them. I am conscious that sometimes I tell you things and then you find out the same information at Rosslyn Chapel in the talk. The problem is that the talk is never the same twice. Different tour guides at Rosslyn give the talk, and you can guarantee that whatever I don't tell you, they don't tell you, and whatever I do tell you, they'll tell you. However hard I try, so I sit in that talk every time and listen to it so that I'm aware of what you've been told at Rosslyn, and then I can pick up on some of those themes later. But it is frustrating because there's things like I want to tell you and think, oh, they won't tell you this, and then of course that tour guide tells you that. But the basics is that Rosslyn Chapel was a private chapel of burial and worship, built in the 15th century. I hope you'll be impressed, people. For a family called the Sinclairs. And the Sinclairs had a castle, and then they rebuilt their castle, and it's the new build, it's a second incarnation of their castle that is still in Rosslyn, albeit not accessible at the moment because again it's having building work on it. So the ruins of Rosslyn Castle are about a 15-minute walk away from the chapel, down a hill in Rosslyn Glen. Normally I would say, yeah, that makes a nice little walk to go and see it, but you cannot access it at the moment because of the building work. So this family, the Sinclairs, they originally came from France, from a place in France called Saint Clair, and that's how they get their surname. And they came across to England with the Norman Conquest, that was the word I was looking for, the Norman Conquest. We believe that they were cousins of William the Conqueror. And parents, please don't worry if your kids are talking, doing anything, please don't worry about it. I mean, I'm sure most of us have children ourselves. Yeah? Honestly, please just let them be, yeah? So the family came over initially to England, and then something seems to have happened. We think they maybe fell out with the cousin, with William the Conqueror. They go in a different direction, sort of politically, but also geographically, and they come to Scotland, the Sinclair family, with French heritage, Norman heritage. And it just so happens that somewhere along the way, a member of that family meets an English princess called Margaret. She's from the House of Wessex, and her family have several times had to flee England because of different attacks, either Viking or Norman attacks. And a member of the Sinclair family, a guy called William the Seemly Sinclair, he brings Margaret to Scotland and introduces her to the Scottish king, Malcolm Canmore, a Gaelic speaker. And Malcolm chooses Margaret as his wife. So as a thank you from the king for bringing him a wife, the Sinclairs get gifted with land, and that's how they establish themselves at Rosslyn in the beginning. And then they build their castle, later they build their second castle, then they build the chapel. But what you need to know about the Sinclairs are that they are loyal to the Scottish monarchy throughout history. They fight in all the major battles, and they're often rewarded with knighthoods. So you get a lot of Sir William Sinclair or Sir Henry Sinclairs. It's a bit confusing that so many of them seem to have the same name, but they're a really important family in our history. Okay, so most of the chapel is a 15th century, and that includes the roof. The roof is stone and it's carved. So when you're in the chapel, make sure you look up at the carved roof, because that is the original roof, incredibly. And that is even when the chapel has fallen into disuse for over 200 years. It wasn't actually a working church. And it's incredible that the roof survived. It's also incredible because the castle gets destroyed twice in warfare. Once by Henry VIII of England, and once in the English Civil War under Oliver Cromwell. And yet the chapel survives. The chapel, incidentally, got used for stabling the horses for Oliver Cromwell's troops. And we think one of the reasons it might have survived is because we know the family were heavily involved in Freemasonry. The Sinclair family were heavily involved in Freemasonry, and we think that Oliver Cromwell was also involved in Freemasonry, and he maybe didn't want to destroy the carvings. That's a guess, but that's what we think. That Rosslyn Chapel survived because during the English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell didn't want to have the carvings with their Freemasonry symbolism destroyed. Okay, that will do for now, guys, but I will be back. Have a little break. We are going to drive out through the suburbs, and it's going to be a great time. You're going to have plenty of time on arrival at the chapel to buy your tickets, look at the visitor centre briefly, and then get a good seat in the chapel for 9:30. So we'll be at Rosslyn in about 10 minutes time.